Hey guys, Tim Ulbrich here, and welcome to the YFP podcast, where each week we strive to inspire and encourage you on your path towards achieving financial freedom. The YFP team is off this week for a mid-year break, something we do annually to pause, reflect on the first half of the year, plan ahead for the second half of the year, and spend time with family and loved ones. With the team on break this week, I'm bringing back one of our most listened to episodes, an interview I had back in August 2021 with two-time number one national best-selling author, Rachel Cruze. During the show, Rachel walks through discovering your personal money mindset, including how we form our ideas about money and how we learn to handle money as we do through our childhood money classroom. Rachel outlines 7 money tendencies, how they not only impact your financial picture, and how these tendencies affect interpersonal relationships with significant others. Okay, let's hear from today's sponsor, First Horizon, and then we'll jump into my interview with Rachel Cruze. Does saving 20% for a down payment on a home feel like an uphill battle? It's no secret that pharmacists have a lot of competing financial priorities, including high student loan debt, meaning that saving 20% for a down payment on a home may take years. We've been on a hunt for a solution for pharmacists that are ready to purchase a home loan with a lower down payment and are happy to have found that option with First Horizon. First Horizon offers a professional home loan option, aka doctor or pharmacist home loan, that requires a 3% down payment for a single family home or townhome for first-time home buyers, has no PMI, and offers a 30-year fixed rate mortgage on home loans up to $726,200. The pharmacist home loan is available in all states except Alaska and Hawaii and can be used to purchase condos as well. However, rates may be higher and a condo review has to be completed. To check out the requirements for First Horizon's pharmacist home loan and to start the pre-approval process, visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. Again, that's yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's really an honor to have you on, and I'm excited to talk about your latest book, Know Yourself, Know Your Money. And for those listening in the YFP community that are already familiar with the Ramsey baby steps, I think this book does an excellent job covering much of the mindset, the behaviors, the beliefs that are the foundation to ensuring your goals and dreams become a reality. So, Rachel, in part 1 of the book, which is discovering your personal money mindset, you talk in chapter 1 about your childhood money classroom. And you make a strong argument that this is the first step in understanding why we handle money the way that we do. And that, quote, there are really 2 ways we learned about money: what our parents communicated emotionally and what they communicated verbally. Tell us more about these 2 modes of communication and why it is so important to dig into our past for some honest reflection before we chart our path forward.
Yes. Well, whenever you talk to any great psychologist or counselor or therapist, they will tell you that so much of who you are today is from how you grew up, whether that's coping mechanisms, defense strategies, all of that. Learning to kind of survive really in your childhood is something that's ingrained in all of us. And so when I was writing the book, I wanted to go in and say, okay, I want to understand why we handle money the way we do. Like you said, it's not just the what. We talk about the how a lot around Ramsey Solutions, how to get out of debt, how to invest, how to refinance, how to give. But I wanted to answer that question, why? Why do we do the things we do? And it always stems back to that classroom that you lived in, which is your home growing up. And there's a lot of lessons in those classrooms that we grew up in that you want to unlearn as an adult. You're like, I don't want to take that with me. And there's a lot of lessons that you do want to take with you. And so being able to just to pinpoint, hey, my money habits, the way I view money, part of that is because of my environment growing up. And so those 2 modes of communication, like you said, the verbal, what is said out loud, and then that emotional state is really important. So as I was writing the manuscript for this book, kind of coming across these 2 things, and I remember thinking, oh, I'm so, okay, it's like a quadrant. God gave me a graph to explain this, and I'm so happy because it ends up being this 4 quadrant where that verbal communication and emotional communication intersect. And it ends up really showing these 4 different money classrooms. And so for you to be able to identify, okay, I grew up on classroom number 1 or classroom number 2 there, and to understand that really will show you why you handle money the way you do today.
Yeah, and this was really a gut check for me, Rachel, as a father of 4 young boys. I feel like I do a decent job and communicating verbally about money. It's something I talk about daily, but it was a gut check on like the emotional part and what are some of the messages that we're sending to our kids. And so, part of this, as I read it, is unlearning in part or reflecting upon your past, but also for those that are out there that are parents, thinking about some of the money scripts and messages that we're sending in our own homes as well.
That's right. Yeah. And even that nonverbal, in the classroom one is the anxious money classroom, and that's where it's
Mhm.
verbally closed, but emotionally stressed. Classroom two is the unstable money classroom, where it's emotionally stressed, but verbally open. So it's lots of conflict, lots of fighting. That
Mhm.
classroom three is the unaware money classroom, which is emotionally calm, but it's verbally closed. So it's not talked about, but it's also not felt like it's a stress point. So you don't really even, your head's kind of in the sand, if you will, about money
Mhm.
until you leave home and realize, oh, wow, there's a lot to do with this subject. And that classroom four is that secure money classroom. And that's where it's verbally open, but emotionally calm. So that fourth classroom, kind of like what you're saying, I really wanted the readers to think about their current nuclear family to say, okay, if I do have kids or if I want kids in the future, like, how am I going to do this on the verbal and emotional scale? And so moving to that classroom four is really important for people, because the thing about that is that you don't have to be a perfect parent by any means to be in that classroom.
Right.
You also don't have to have a ton of money, right? You don't have to be like a millionaire to be in that. You can, it's these habits that you create. And what's funny is, when you're emotionally calm about money, usually there's a plan around it. Usually there's a level of healthy control.
Mhm.
There's some safety nets in place, like an emergency fund. Like there's these habits that you do in the how-to of money that sets you up to create that emotionally stable home around this subject. Where for so many people, it's not safe, it's not
Mhm.
emotionally calm. It is very stressed. And when you look at the statistics of the average American today, I'm like, yeah, I would be stressed too, right? Living paycheck to paycheck, having
Absolutely.
$16,000 of credit card debt. I mean, all of it.
Mhm.
So I understand why that is, but getting yourself in a place financially where you're more under control, naturally, you're going to bring in that emotional side in your household, which is amazing. And then the verbal side, that you pointed out too, is talking about it. And I
Mhm.
think it's less taboo today than it was even 20 years ago. I think parents engage their kids in more conversations maybe than the boomers did for their kids,
Mhm.
like when you look at the different generational differences. But again, engaging it and showing the mechanics, but also the other side of it of, hey, here's what contentment looks like. Here's what generosity does to your heart and your viewpoint in life. I mean, bringing in those kind of hard and soft subjects of money are important to talk to you about with kids.
Yeah, and I love, Rachel, how you take folks through this journey of understanding these four different classrooms you mentioned in the quadrant. And it can be, heavy to kind of walk through and reflect on some of this. But you end chapter 3, where you talk about calm money classrooms. You end chapter 3 by reassuring us that our childhood does not define us. You say, quote, your childhood may have given you a rocky start, but it doesn't make or break you, regardless of the household you grew up in. You get to choose your quadrant from this point forward. What an awesome view, right? We learn from the past, but we've got an opportunity to chart a new path going forward.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's so much hope. And I think even in the money piece of my message that I, communicate with people is like, no matter what mistakes you've made, yeah, maybe you do have a ton of debt. So on a more logistical side, yeah, you have a deeper hole to dig out of than the person next to you. But no matter what, you get to make decisions to say, no, I actually want to change, how I view something or the habits around money. And the same is true with your classroom. A lot of people I would say grew up in a hard environment when it came to money with their parents. But yeah, that you don't have to just mirror that story, right? You can take charge of your life to say, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and bash my parents, but I'm also not going to
Hmm.
defend them. I'm going to just tell the truth of what happened. And here's the truth.
Hmm.
Okay, there's some good stuff and there's some bad stuff. And the bad stuff I can forgive. And I'm going to move forward though to choose something different for my life and my family. And I think it's powerful. And I think we have to do that in all of parenting. I'm not a parenting expert by any means, but I'm like, my husband and I have said, okay, this is our family. What are we going to choose to do in this? And so the money piece is part of that.
Absolutely. Give yourself some grace along the way, right? All of us
That's right.
parents
Oh,
know that.
absolutely.
So
There's hope and grace. Absolutely.
absolutely. Rachel, in chapter 4, which is your unique money tendencies, you introduce 7 major money tendencies. And we're not going to go through all of these, but I'll read them off quickly. And those 7 are save or spender, nerd or free spirit, experiences or things, quality or quantity, safety or status, abundance or scarcity, and planned giving or spontaneous giving. And I want to break down one of these further that I suspect our audience has heard of before, and that is the concept of being a nerd or being a free spirit. And so, this as one example of these different tendencies. Tell us more about the difference between these two and why each really has its own benefits and challenges. And we want to think about these on a scale.
Yes. Well, when I did these 7 tendencies, I didn't want one to be right or wrong because I feel like that
Yes.
can happen a lot. It's just no, these are naturally where you're bent. And if you go to the extremes of any of these tendencies, that can get unhealthy. Kind of that middle ground is to say, okay, I'm naturally bent towards this, but I can actually have a little bit of both, which makes you, I think, more
Mhm.
well-rounded, honestly. But yeah, the nerd and free spirit, that was kind of a phrase that was coined, two terms that were coined by my dad, honestly, about probably 20 years ago, talking about the budget specifically and how
Mhm.
I make it a little bit more broad and just the idea of how you view money. But one of or if you're married, usually there's opposites attract, but you
Mhm.
either lean toward a nerd, which is the one that, yeah, you're just organized. You probably have Excel spreadsheets all over the place. You love to budget. You love to feel in control. You know what's going on. You keep up with everything. Numbers are your friends. That it feels great to know what's going on. And so that nerd is naturally going to be bent one way towards money, which obviously is more of the control factor. Sometimes more the scarcity mindset.
Mhm.
They want to just know what's going on. And then the free spirit's on the opposite end. And that's the person that is more, hey, everything's going to work out. It's fine. It's fine. A budget to them, it feels restrictive. It feels like there's no fun in life. If I have to live on a budget, that
Mhm.
means I have to say no a lot. And I don't want to say no. I want to say yes because you only live once. It's a little bit more of that mentality. And what's funny is I actually lean more free spirits in who I am. So this
Mhm.
money stuff and budgeting, some of it was hard for me to say, okay, I have to learn this because I don't have to become a nerd to be good at money. That's not
Mhm.
the reason behind this, but it is to say, hey, there are qualities that I need to pick up because if I'm a free spirit on the extreme of a free spirit side, I'm probably going to be broke. I'm probably going to have lots of debt because I'm not keeping up with anything. I'm just doing what I want in the moment, what feels good. And that's not wise. But I also I don't have to absolutely love numbers. Like my husband, he
Mhm.
is more of the nerd. Like, I mean, he has spreadsheets, he's like all about the 5-year goal and what's going in each month, looking at the mutual funds. I mean, he just loves it. And I'm like, I'm the money person that talks about this every day. And I don't love it that much. Like I'll do the budget and track transactions, but that's about it. So again, it's just pinpointing, hey, here's where I lean. Here's places I can learn. And here's some really great things about that side of the nerd or great things about the free spirit.
Mm.
And then if you're married, again, it's good to call that out too, because I think in marriage, money can be such a difficult subject. But to be able to say, okay, you're not my enemy in this, you're just
Mhm.
more of a nerd in that, or you're more of a free spirit. So how can we come together and work as a team?
Yeah, you do a great job of the book going through each one of these sets that I mentioned, and not only what they are and some of the differences and where that balance might be, but also some great exercises at the end of the chapter where folks can reflect upon those. And I think it would be great conversation starters as well for couples that are going through this together. Rachel, chapters 5 and 6, it gets real, right? You start to talk about your money fears, 6 of them in total. And I want to pick apart the fear that you say is the most common one you see, which is not having enough. And essentially, this is, if something bad happens, the fear that I won't survive financially. And as you talk about in the book, this could be a job loss. This could be a huge health bill. This could be a major house issue. And really, the list can go on and on of all the things that might go wrong. And it could be a today thing, a today fear, or it could be a future fear. For example, will I have enough when it comes time to retirement? And I think this quickly becomes overwhelming and for many can become paralyzing. And as you say in the book, the what if question, it's a scary question. And so tell us more here. How can we face this fear head on without it ultimately paralyzing us to take action with our financial plan?
Yeah, well, when we talk about fear for this book, I did a lot of research around it because usually fear is just seen as a 100% bad thing, right? Don't,
Hmm.
face your fears. Don't let your fear hold you back, all that. Well, some of that, yes, is very true. I remember talking to Dr. Chip Dodd about this, and I loved what he said because he said fear can actually be a gift.
Mm.
Fear is your body's response that you are in need of something. Now, again, when that fear becomes paralyzing or turns into anxiety, like any of that, we don't want that. But just that
That's right.
initial fear, okay, what is that telling you? Because it actually could be telling you something that you need to listen to diminish that fear. So for a lot of people, and gosh, we just walked through 2020, right? Which was just the craziest year, I think, of all of our lives around this. And so you could say, okay, my fear is that if something happens, am I going to be okay? If we lose a job, am I going to be okay? Well, you look at your situation, and again, just pulling in just stats that I know that 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. The average car payment is around $548. The average
Mhm.
family owes $16,000 just in their credit cards. So you put all that together, and if something happens, are you going to be okay? Well, yeah, you're going to be able to literally survive, but financially, you're going to be in a mess. You're going to be in a mess if you don't have another paycheck to pay these bills. So let's look at the reality of what's going on. Again, it's not to paralyze you, but it's to say, okay, what can I do now to get in better control of my money? Am I budgeting? Am I living on less than I make? Do I have an emergency fund? Do I have a goal that I'm working towards that actually puts my money towards something, right? Am I giving? Like, what are am I doing these things? And for a lot of people, if they say, no, I'm not, hopefully it's a little bit of a motivator. I don't think fear has to be the only motivator, but I think it's a good jump start to it of, okay, let's get some things in place so that we can say, okay, maybe you look up in 24, 36, months, 3 years down the road, and you're completely debt free. You have a fully funded emergency fund of 36 months worth of expenses. You now have retirement planned out. You know how much you're putting in each month. Like you actually have a plan in place. And what caused that may have been that fear of, wow, if I lose one paycheck, this entire thing just implodes is what it feels like. So again, let that fear drive you. And again, it's a big one, that fear of, am I going to be okay? And what's interesting is prior to 2020, it was women's top financial fear. So for some men, it was, there's a dream that I have that I can't get to because of my life, or, you fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But women, day in and day out, consistently when surveyed, it was, am I going to be okay? And then I think you fast forward to 2021. I don't have hard data for this, but I would say a lot of people now are in that bucket.
Absolutely.
Because of what we walk through. So again, I want this fear to not turn into something that's super unhealthy, but I want it to be a little bit of that jump start to say, okay, is this rational? Okay, maybe it is. So maybe I need to change some things. But then also, I'll tell you this too, it could be irrational. I mean, my husband and I have been doing this plan for 11 years of marriage. So we're debt free. I mean, we've done it to the T and it works. Number one, I can say that out of proof. But number two, even during that pandemic, I mean, I had a few nights where I went to bed thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to be okay? But what allowed me to a little bit have that safety is realizing, number one, black and white on paper, the numbers, yes, we're going to be fine because we've been doing this, we've been diligent. But also number two, Rachel, it's a little bit of a wake-up call for me emotionally to say, why am I so fearful that this foundation that I've set, this financial foundation, that if it was shook, who am I, right? And it made me do a gut check, honestly, to say, okay, where is my identity? Where have I been putting value? Because money, while we need to be responsible with it, and we want to be able to do things like get out of debt and build wealth and change our family tree and be generous to others, all of these wonderful things, money is not our God. And if it's the thing day in and day out that you're looking to, it's not going to fulfill you. And I kind of got to a place where I had to do a gut check on myself last year to think, okay, who am I emotionally on that side, right? If that foundation is shaken. So again, this fear conversation, I think, is a really important one to have. And I think it's a really good one to have.
I do too. And I think it can be motivating for the reasons that you mentioned. Our listeners have heard me say many times about really building a strong financial foundation and thinking about what the building blocks of that are. But there are challenges that can be had in the security of that foundation and what you're ultimately putting that security in. So I think a great reminder. And this section of the book, as I mentioned, really powerful. You talk through several other fears. We're just scratching the surface here. You talk about the fears of not realizing your dreams, of not being capable, external fears, past mistakes, repeating the past, all types of things that we want to be considering. And so I hope folks will pick up a copy of the book and check that out. Rachel, part 2 of the book, discovering what you do with money and why. You connect the information the reader learns in part 1 so that it can then be applied to their personal situation. And one thing that stood out to me in this section was the concept that you talk about, the power of contentment. And you say that, quote, contentment is a process that changes your motivation for spending money. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, contentment, I think, is a huge piece of this financial conversation that has to be in place, because money is like a magnifying glass. It makes you more of what you already are. And so if you are a discontent person and you think, and it's all of us, at different times in life, for sure, and maybe different parts of the day too. So I'm not speaking out of that I have found the answer to it all, but realizing, though, if we live in a discontentment state, which usually results in, okay, if I can just make X amount of money, if I can just buy this kind of car, if I can go on that kind of vacation, if I can live in this kind of house, then everything's going to be fixed. And we think that in our culture, in our country, that our problems are fixed by stuff, and that discontentment is just magnified. And the problem is if you build wealth and you actually have the money to go and get these things, you get the things, and it doesn't fulfill you, and you're discontent
Right.
again with just more stuff around you. And so there's that heart piece that I think is important to keep in check. And for me, it's calling out to people. Okay, what are the things in your life that money there's not a price tag towards? And this was kind of my journey even just last year. I thought, Rachel, what are the things in my life that I can't pay for?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a great marriage, having children that I am trying to raise in the best way possible, my health, my spiritual walk, my family, my friendships, like relationships. And so kind of mapping those things out and realizing, okay, if I can invest my time and my energy in those things,
Mm-hmm.
life is so much richer, right? And again, not that it doesn't mean you can't have a great house or go on a great vacation. My husband and I just got back on Saturday from a fun trip that him and I just took, for a few nights. It was fantastic. It was wonderful. But those things don't fulfill you, right? It's the fact that I was with my husband and we got to have that time together. That is what was fulfilling. And so all of that, I think, stems to that contentment. And that contentment piece, again, I think is we tried to find it in stuff. And I really push people to find it in things that money can't buy.
Mm-hmm. My favorite part of the book, Rachel, is that you make a really good case for the importance of connecting saving and dreaming. Saving and dreaming. And we talk a lot on this show about having a strong financial why. And this chapter reminded me of that concept. You say that, quote, not having any savings is a warning sign for two big problems. The first problem is that your house isn't in order. You're not prepared. But not having savings is also a warning sign of a second problem, that you're not tuned into your dreams. What do you mean by this?
Well, when I did this part of the book, I wanted to kind of walk through, okay, why do we spend the way we spend? Why do we save the way we save? Why do we give the way we give? And so when I was in that saving section, I'm like, okay, why do we save the way we save? And I'm like, well, what are the things we save for? I'm like, well, it's because we have these dreams. Is it to build a house one day? Is it to be debt free? Whatever it is. And that gives purpose behind our dollars. It gives us purpose to say, okay, when the money comes in, I actually know where it's going, and it's going to something that I value in life. And that's what makes things rich, right? That's what brings joy.
Absolutely.
And people that just live life and they're not intentional, it's just kind of that paycheck to paycheck. I go to work, I get paid, I just keep doing the same thing. And you look up in 5 years, not much has changed about your life. I bet your savings hasn't changed either because you don't have a goal. You don't have something you're saving towards. And so that dreaming portion, it's so, so critical. I mean, any great book motivator that shows you, how to be better in certain parts of your life, goals are always in there. Those dreams are always in there. And so there's the short-term dreams, have something that you're working towards 5 years and less so that you can get to it quickly. And then have those dreams that are 5 years or more that you say, okay, out there in the future, what do I want? And then also have shared dreams. If those two dreams don't coincide with your spouse, then have something you guys are working at together. I mean, all of this is going to be a partnership if you're married. But I think having that dream, those dreams together is so crucial where, yes, we are individuals. So my husband may have a dream to go on a hunting trip, to South Dakota. That's not my dream. That's great. If that's his dream, that's not my dream. So what are the dreams that we have together? And so all of that, it gives you such motivation. And it was funny, that trip we just went on last week, we had an agenda. We had like 4 things we wanted to talk about. But one of them was, we literally said our financial dreams. And one of ours was to build a house, and we moved in November of 19. And honestly, since then, I mean, we went through 2020, which was crazy. And now we're kind of on the other side saying, okay, what do we want? Like, besides just a number, like, what are the things that we're shooting for? And just having those conversations, it's so fun. I mean, it just brings life to you, or again, if you're married, to your marriage, just to have things that you're working towards together. Again, it gives you purpose. It gives you purpose to save. And if there's not purpose to save, you're more than likely not going to do it.
Yeah, I think shared dream, it's so important. Great wisdom. I think especially for folks that are in the weeds and maybe frustrated with the budget, or, feeling like a goal is taking forever. I think some of those dreams can lift folks together and get excited behind the vision, especially while there's other things that are happening along the way. Rich, I want to wrap up our time by talking about giving. And you make the case that giving is ultimately the antidote to fear. Why is that the case?
There's something about living life with an open hand where you say, you know what, I'm actually going to give things, because I think the opposite of that is that closed fist mentality where you're going to just control everything and it's all yours and it's just all right here. And there's a level of that just, it gets exhausting, and there's not joy in that. And so when you actually open your hand and give, which sounds counterintuitive, right? If I'm trying to put money towards a dream, or I'm trying to put money towards getting out of debt or building an emergency fund, but I'm giving some of it away, like, that just seems so backwards. Where in fact, what it does is it fuels you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you live a life that you move on the spectrum from being selfish, where it is all about you, to selfless, where you actually see other people and you see, okay, the needs that are out there, things that your money can do, even if it's not a lot of money, but using it as a tool to help people, it changes you. I mean, it really, really changes you. And there's nothing like it. It's cliche to say, but it's true. The joy that you get from giving is unlike any other joy that you can have in life. Like it gives something to you, to your soul. Because I think we were created to be givers. And when you're living in that, it changes your perspective. And I also think selfless people have a better quality of life. I think they're better spouses, better parents, better coworkers, better friends, people that actually care about other people. It's an amazing thing, but I think it gives you a quality of life that's so deep. And I think that it can be, obviously you can give all different kinds of ways, but your money's one of those. When you live that life with an open hand, it does something to your soul that I think is so, so healthy in a world that is so self-centered.
Rachel, great stuff. Where is the best place that our community can go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, you can go to rachelcruze.com. The book, Know Yourself, Know Your Money, is anywhere books are sold. And I'm also have a podcast, The Rachel Cruze Show, you can check out as well.
Awesome. So to the YFP community, make sure to pick up your copy of Know Yourself, Know Your Money, available really anywhere, also available RamseySolutions.com. We've just scratched the surface during this interview. I'm confident you'll gain so much more from digging into the book and completing the activities at the end of each chapter. In the book, you'll discover what's at the root of your money tendencies, including how to overcome your biggest money fears, how your childhood impacts your money decisions today, and what really motivates your spending, saving, giving, and more. Rachel, thank you again for taking time to come on the show. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. Really, really thankful. Thanks.
Before we wrap up today's show, I want to again thank this week's sponsor of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, First Horizon. We're glad to have found a solution for pharmacists that are unable to save 20% for a down payment on a home. A lot of pharmacists and the YFP community have taken advantage of First Horizon's pharmacist home loan, which requires a 3% down payment for a single family home or townhome for first-time home buyers and has no PMI on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. To learn more about the requirements for First Horizon's pharmacist home loan and to get started with the pre-approval process, you can visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. Again, that's yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. As we conclude this week's podcast, an important reminder that the content on this show is provided to you for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding material should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on the podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist unless otherwise noted and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you again for your support of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. Have a great rest of your week.